Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it is me again, Khali, your host, talking to you to Coffee Chat, supported by SAPIN, which is the SA Properties Investors Network. I know you have missed me. I was away, but now I am back, and I say thank you very much for joining us. If you weren't sure if I was going to be here, I am. So for those of you who is your first time ever actually joining us on the South Africa's Properties Investors Network Coffee Chat, this is how we do it. We just, we appreciate you guys joining us. And so let me know in the chat box if this is your first time. If you are shy, just put up a thumbs up and let me know where you guys are watching us from. And if this is your first time watching us, and if it is, and you don't know who we are, well, we're a network of like-minded individuals, and we connect people in the property space who either want to start and or grow their property journey. Yes, we make those things happen. And as always, I want to start with our events because we always have jam-packed events. And as we're coming closer to the end of the year, we have quite a few events that are going to be the last ones for the year. So if you miss out, unfortunately, you would have missed out completely. So you have to book your tickets, ladies and gentlemen, and you have to make sure that you actually are present for these events. I know a lot of you have been there and some of you have not, but you need to make sure that you're going to be there for these events. The first one that is going to be happening is that we're going to be having a free webinar. And this is on Thursday. And we're going to be exploring the different strategies in property. So if you want to understand what strategy works best for you in terms of your goals and the dreams that you have for your property portfolio, we are going to be launching that on Thursday. So please, you can register on our website. Link is in the description. Also, we have a coaching and legal and support webinar. And these are for exclusively our members. If you are a member, the foundation, intermediate, or professional, you can actually register for the coaching and legal support webinar that's going to be happening on the 12th of October. And that's coming up. And also, we have an in-person event. So for those of you who are looking at me via the screen, you can actually register for an in-person event that we're going to be having on the 12th of October, and that's going to be in Edenvale. And this is a free actual in-person event. And we're going to be talking about strategies, ladies and gentlemen. So you have to register for those. Please note it is free, but the seats are limited. So get onto it. The link is in the chat box. We're also going to be having a mastermind on Thursday, and this is for all of our professional members. Unfortunately, our intermediate and professional can't join this one. I'm going to be having a mastermind that's happening on the 26th of October. That's at 6 o'clock. And we're also going to be launching something pretty interesting. And that is, investors who are agents. So all of my property practitioners out there, my real estate agents, you want to join for this one. This is going to be happening on the 26th of October, lunchtime, 1 o'clock, just as you're viewing me now. And if you aren't a property practitioner, please tell your friends that are property practitioners to actually join this on lunchtime, and it's going to be headed up by Jade Barkhazen, who's a seasoned property practitioner and a property investor, and he's going to show you how to unlock the potential of the deals that you are selling for you to actually expand them in your property journey. And then lastly, we are going to be having the 2-day workshop that's happening on the 28th and 29th of October. That's happening in Edenvale. As always, tickets are limited, so please register for those. We are going to also be having a free webinar, and that's on the Tuesday, the 31st of October, and that's going to be happening at 6:30. And as I said, we have a lot of events, so we make sure that you are always in the know and in the understanding of what it is happening in the property space. So if you just go to our website, the link should be in the chat box. You'll be able to see all of these events, when they're happening, when you should register, how you should register. All of that will be on our website. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, please don't forget to enter Investor of the Year award. So now that we have that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say we this is our resident host. It's our golden nugget giver, and this gentleman is an esteemed expert in facilities management. Now, if either you're starting your portfolio or you're growing it, you are dealing with facilities. right? Water, electricity, you're dealing with it. But there's no way you are not dealing with these things. And so Bevin is the gentleman that you want to know and understand, because he's going to be helping us be more efficient with our facilities management and actually execute it in such a way that your margins are higher because you are executing your facilities side way more efficiently. So please, please, please help me welcome Bevin. How are you, sir?
Good afternoon, Khali, and good afternoon to everyone. It's great to be on here with you again.
Fantastic. As always, we always appreciate your nuggets, but now it's not a nugget. It's a full-on unpacking of facilities management and the do's, the don'ts, and the things they didn't know. I did mention that, whether you have one property, just a bachelor, or you have, apartment complexes and you're a developer, you're dealing with facilities, whether you like it or not, right? And so I think a lot of the time people are very tenant based and they're like, oh, I need to get tenants, whatever. But then it's like, once you add capacity and you've hit your quota, how do you manage the facilities that these tenants are using? And you are going to be able to help us with that.
100%, yeah. And I think we're aware of the fact that facilities management from a corporate perspective is a box that's ticked. If you work in any sort of office building, etc., there's always someone looking after the building, looking after the maintenance, someone who's dealing with IT problems, etc. But we tend to forget as property investors that that needs to be something as part of our portfolio, part of our business, because your property portfolio is a business. And you really do need to keep that in mind. You need to start putting in place the strategies to manage your properties commercially, manage them to, as you were saying, get the most out of them, get the most profit out of them, etc. And for me, the biggest item that I pay attention to is in building my property portfolio, I'm not just thinking of month to month paycheck like you would think of your salary. I'm thinking generational wealth. I'm thinking, how do I make sure that I set things up so they run smoothly for my kids, kids, etc. And I think that is a massive thing to pay attention to, because you don't want to just do things on sort of like a habit space, as far as like you're always having to deal with breakdowns. You want to turn it into a habit space as far as it works seamlessly. There's no headaches that come up. So that's a big thing for me when it comes to facilities management.
Okay. And also, ladies and gentlemen, please don't forget, if you have any questions for Bevin, please just put them in the chat. And we'll make sure we get those answered. But Bevin, there's something very niche about SAPIN-Prepaid, right? And that's the ability to potentially recoup rent from the facility. So I just, or maybe I'm saying it wrong. I'm not sure if I'm phrasing it right. But can you please just help us unpack that? Because that's something that's quite groundbreaking.
Awesome. Yeah. So part of what we do as part of the South African Property Investors Network is we educate. And a lot of this education is around cross mentorship. So it's not about someone else throwing information at you and you sort of take in what you want. It's more a case of how do we teach each other. So like you mentioned earlier, this coming Thursday evening, there's a coaching session that's happening, group coaching session that happens. And those are great because we get to learn from each other. We get to learn from some of the professionals as well as from those individuals who are actually doing and participating in property investing. So from that perspective, we've learned a huge amount over the years, and we want to sort of start putting into place best practices for all of you, our members, and those property investors who are aspiring to become more professional in their journey and look after their portfolio. So one of those things is, like we talk about facilities management, one of the elements below or within that facilities management is how do you manage your utilities? And unfortunately, what happens is we tend to wait until we need it right now, or we wait until we've already burnt our fingers before we start looking at solutions as far as managing our utilities. So part of SAPIN-Prepaid, which sits under the SAPIN group itself, we then look at, okay, how do we get the best relationships with the prepaid vending companies to make sure that you, our members, benefit from the right solutions for your property? So what's nice is I then become very available for you. If you've got a property that you're now in the process of transferring, if you've got existing properties that you're looking at putting prepaid meters in place, you're welcome to give me a call, drop me an email. I'm sure Sam will pop the link on the SAPIN Connect page into the chat here. But what's very important is this reiteration of learning from each other's mistakes and each other's experience. So as part of the group or the membership, we're in contact with people who are dealing with different solutions, and we manage to refine and say, hey, listen, stay away from that solution, rather look at this solution. And we look at it specifically as property investors, where you're looking at wanting, like you say, to maximize your return, and then to make sure that it becomes user-friendly going forward. The old system where you're using manual readings, you're either having to send someone to your property every month, or you're having to go to your property every month, take a reading of the meter, go back to your desk, get a calculator, try and calculate how much a tenant used from when you took a reading last month to how much to the new reading, and you sort of doing that math and going, okay, what have they actually used? There's a lot of room for user error. That person taking the reading, you trying to do the maths, you trying to work out what the rate is per kilowatt hour, the rate is per kiloliter in the case of water. So the idea here is take away that admin and make it happen seamlessly, make it happen without you even needing to be involved. So a couple of things there is SAPIN-Prepaid looks after water, so you can get a prepaid water meter, which for me is my favorite one because there's so many benefits of having a prepaid water meter in place. And then obviously we've got the SAPIN-Prepaid electricity meters, which is then everyone kind of understands that a lot more smoothly. They understand, listen, my tenant has to pay for their electricity before they use it. I get that money into my bank account. I can then pay the electricity bill. And then I'm not waiting for the tenant to pay me and I'm raking up this debt with the municipality. So there's so many benefits around prepaid electricity, prepaid water. So yeah, I really do encourage people, reach out to us, come chat to us, find out what is the best solution for you.
And you mentioned prepaid meters for water, and as you said, for electricity, it's quite common. Like we all, nationally understand prepaid meters. But I don't think people are quite versed in prepaid meters for water. What would you say, as an investor, how is that useful to install prepaid meters in your properties for water?
Sure, and I mentioned earlier, like the prepaid water meter solution is one of my favorite because what tends to happen is tenants switch off. When it comes to using water, they don't really pay attention. So they're not aware of like the little leaking taps, the leaking toilet, and if there's a burst pipe that's sort of hidden away, what the effect of that is. And suddenly you as the landlord, you're sending them a bill at the end of the month, and it's a huge bill that the tenant hasn't budgeted for. Now suddenly you're trying to get them to pay that bill. They're going, can I pay you end of the month? Can I pay it in installments, etc.? And this becomes this headache for you, where you're constantly chasing them for them to pay for your water, and versus the other side of it, when they're paying up front. And what a lot of the sort of lower LSM tenants get into a habit of is they'll buy maybe 50 Rand every couple of days, and then they know they're disciplining their family. They say, listen, there's 50 Rand. My budget is that it lasts for 2-3 days. You kind of think of that old system your parents would have done, the envelope system on their budgeting. So they're paying attention to their budget. They're empowered to be able to control how much they're using. And then if there's an emergency in that space, so if the geyser bursts, the tenant is only out of pocket the remaining units of that 50 Rand, as an example. So if they've only used 10 Rand, they still got 40 Rand. And if the geyser bursts, the water's going to run until it's used up that little bit of extra credit, and then the meter turns off. So there's two benefits to that. Is A, there's no continual flow where the water is wasted and your tenant's now left with this big bill. There's no continual flow where there's damage to your property. So that obviously reduces the maintenance impact on you as the landlord. And then there's another benefit to it is you don't end up with these surprise bills at the end of the month where suddenly, and I've seen it with some of our landlords, and I've seen it on one or two properties that I've been involved in, where suddenly you get a 60,000, a 70,000 rand bill. And we all know that from a municipality perspective, our invoices are arriving late. So the reading was probably 10 days ago. So since the last reading to today, you still had huge amount of water being wasted, and you're still paying that's going to be in the next bill. So that surprise bill that you receive as a landlord is a double whammy, because you've got the previous month plus you're going to get another heavy bill the next month. Whereas a prepaid meter, when there's a leakage, as soon as you've run out of water on that or credits on that meter, it turns off, and that's super powerful for me.
Okay, so we're already getting questions in the chat box, and this one is actually really good question from Sam Pule. He says, "Hi Bevin, is there anything built into your meters to warn the landlord about bridging or bypassing them?"
So this one's a difficult one, because we all know that there are professional tenants out there. So those tenants who really do know how to work the system.
Professional tenants.
And I've had some experiences in the past where, for instance, what a tenant will do is they'll bypass all the meters in the building. That way you can't point fingers at individual tenants and say, listen, this is the one who bypassed. You can't blame anyone, and it kind of like leaves you with your hands tied. So for me, the first point is, obviously there's a couple solutions, and that's why I say, depending on what property you're on, it's worth you reaching out to me and chatting. What is the best solution for your specific property? And if your big concern is around tenants bridging, bypassing meters, etc., then we look at, okay, what is the risk to yourself, and what is the solution we can put in place, and we make sure we put the right solution in place to start with. So the Rolls Royce of the process is, you can put in a smart meter, and what that means is the meter is talking to a platform or an online app constantly, so it's a live communication, and that one is one of the best solutions. Although the only issue with that is there's a bit more of an expense to that upfront on the hardware, and then also on sort of some of your communication links. So some of them will use a cell phone SIM card to then report to you or to the platform to say this is what the usage is at the moment and so on. So there's a bit of an expense way up there, but obviously the risk is reduced tremendously, which then helps you sleep better at night. So you're sort of weighing that up, the risk versus reward. And then the other solution is really your standard prepaid meters. And what that means is you need to be more aware. You need to be paying attention to what you are paying for electricity versus what you're receiving back from the prepaid meter. And you've got to monitor that. So what I like to do is say, there's a spreadsheet. I can see over the last 3 months, I've been able to, I've received 1,000 Rand a month, and I've paid 1,000 Rand a month, and I can see that balance quite easily. And then, so that allows me to look at the numbers and know what's happening on the meters. And then the last solution is, on a regular basis, have your agent or an electrician pop into the property, have a look to make sure there's no funny business happening on the property. And then that's sort of the best way, where you're visually confirming there hasn't been any bypassing. But it really does come to case, and I think the best bet is reach out to me and say, hey, I've got this fear, I've got this concern, or I've experienced it. How do I prevent it happening again?
Yeah, and as you said, the link for SAPIN Connect to be in contact with Bevin will be in the chat box. And then the other question says, "Hi Bevin, good to hear from you. I have a student accommodation and I have an electricity meter. How feasible is it to add more prepaid meters in? I battle in winter to control the students." And I think this is also a thing of how many should you have, because some people would argue, well, it's not practical to do it in every room, only to find out it just might be. So what would you say to that?
Awesome. This is a fantastic question. And I think if we all bear in mind, with student accommodation, a student receives their accommodation inclusive of everything. So they're getting their Wi-Fi, they're getting their electricity, they're getting their water included in their rent. So I think the first thing to pay attention to is when something is free, it gets abused. And we all know that. If we're not paying for something, we're not monitoring it, we're not caring about it. So for me, the best solution we found is installing a prepaid electricity meter into each room. So where that becomes a benefit is you don't, or your caretaker on the property doesn't have access to each of the bedrooms all of the time. When the student leaves the room, they lock their room to keep their stuff safe. You don't know if they've turned off the lights. You don't know if they've turned off appliances in that room or anything. So for me, it's how do you shift the responsibility onto the tenant? So the big one is install a prepaid meter into the room, into each of your students' rooms. And what we like to do is we say, listen, there's a fair usage policy here. We all know that as far as Wi-Fi usage and that. And you go, yes, I acknowledge that I need to give you free electricity, but it's only to a certain level. So what that means is I'm budgeting that each student in the room is going to use about 50 Rand a month in electricity for that room only. So if you use more than 50 Rand in that room, then you need to top up the meter and you need to add that extra credit onto the meter. And then what it does is it changes habits from the student's perspective, is then they start turning off lights when they leave the room. They start then bearing the responsibility on turning off devices and everything. And they're not consuming more than they have to. And then likewise, in that question is around them using heaters. For me, there is a huge risk to unattended heaters in rooms. There's also a temptation around students maybe putting cooking stoves into their rooms, etc., which then raises your fire risk quite substantially. So when you sort of eliminate the free element of the water, of the electricity, then it sort of reduces them misbehaving with the electricity in their room.
Mm-hmm. That's quite fascinating. So we keep the questions going. Our next question is, hi Bevin, how much roughly will a 36 unit block of flats in Berea cost us to put prepaid water meters? Does one need municipality approval for that? And again, this is why we can easily put you in contact with Bevin via SAPIN Connect, which is in the chat box. But yes, how much would that be roughly?
So the water meters tend to be quite a lot more expensive. They're in that region of 2,900. So I'll do that maths quickly, times the 36. So it's about 100 grand on that. So it's quite expensive for that 36 meters. However, because we're now talking a little bit more volume, there's room for us to obviously have a discussion and see if we can get better sort of prices from the suppliers, etc. So I suggest, Sam, reaching out to me, having a chat with me, and then let's see if we can get a specific quote for you for this solution. And then with this being more than 36, or should I say more than 20 units, this is a great situation for us to put a solution where it's a smart solution, where all those prepaid water meters are on smart meters, which means that they have leak detection warnings in the smart meter, etc. So that becomes a way better solution for you in that example. The reason I say more than 20 is because that's where it starts getting feasible for the communication units for those prepaid meters to talk to the app, etc. So that's a big one. And then on the other side of that question is around the municipality approval. Something that we're often not aware of is when we deal with prepaid meters, there's two types. A lot of us are familiar with the city of Johannesburg as an example. They'll give you a prepaid meter, and that is owned by the municipality. Okay, if it's a standard meter that's owned by the municipality, that's the one with the dial on it, and the municipality reads it every month. So those are municipality or Eskom meters. And then what we deal with as SAPIN-Prepaid is your sub meter. So it is sub 2, so below the municipality meter. So you would still have the municipality water meter in this example, and then you would have your sub meter, which you as the owner, that is owned by you. So you as the landlord, that is owned by you, and that is on the property. It is your possession. You don't need any approval from the municipality to install a sub-meter, all that you really need to do is you need to be making sure that you're using a certified technician. So if it's an electrical meter, you need a certified electrician. I always suggest to people, make sure you get a COC after the installation, because that's great for covering you, it's great for covering your building, your tenants, and it's a box to tick off with your insurance if something goes wrong. And I think you should, as landlords, bear in mind, if you do any modifications to your plumbing, to your electricity, it's worth getting a COC for that installation specifically that gets partnered with your COC from when you bought the property, because it just shows a right administration journey where you're ticking the boxes and you're not doing anything as a cowboy.
Okay, that is fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Bevin. And if you guys do have any more questions, please put them in the chat box. Otherwise, Bevin, as we close off, what then would you say are, your golden nugget? Even though we were discussing facilities today, would you say, for the average investor out there, be it like somebody starting out or someone who has quite a large portfolio, what's the one thing you're like, please be on the lookout for this, or that a tip that you want to give them?
Awesome. So I think maybe there are two for me. Is the first one being through our journey with prepaid meters within the membership space, my own personal properties and the properties I've been involved in, I've experienced that not all prepaid meter companies are the same. And we went through sort of the hard knocks where you basically don't benefit the same way that you should, and your expectations are let down quite a bit, which is one of the reasons we put SAPIN-Prepaid together, is to make sure that we've got the right solution for our members, as opposed to what tends to happen is, as a landlord, we go, flip, I need a prepaid meter, go onto Google, you find the cheapest meter, you put it in, and then you're left with the backup issues afterwards. So for me, don't be tempted to go and get the cheapest meter, because if something is too good to be true at the start, you're going to pay for it later. So I think that's a big one for me. And then also, having said that, we're very passionate around trying to make sure that as many of our members and as many landlords as possible take advantage of SAPIN-Prepaid, because we know that there's huge value for them. So there is a reward space for SAPIN Intermediate and SAPIN Professional members, where if you refer meters, there's a little bit of a commission kickback to you. So there's a nice reward structure that we're setting up for members. And then likewise, if you install meters in your own property, there's a benefit there for you as well.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. As always, it's a pleasure. Bevin, I want to say thank you so much for joining us and teaching us, as always, about facilities management, which is, the most important thing, second to actual tenants in any investor's journey into property. So thank you very much, Bevin.
You're welcome, and thank you.
Awesome. And ladies and gentlemen, as we say goodbye, I just want to give you a quick rundown of our events again, so you guys know what is happening and where it's happening and how it's happening. And the links to all of this will be in the chat box. So just go to our website and you'll be able to know when, what, and where. Like I said, on the 31st of October, we're going to be having the free finance webinar. Yes, it's a free webinar for finance. That's going to be on the 31st of October at 6:30. Then we have the 2-day workshop. You have to register for this. The knowledge and the insight is paramount. So that's going to be happening on the 28th and 29th of October. And as I said, we're launching something new with estate agents, also known as property practitioners, with Jade Barkhazen. That's going to be happening at 1 o'clock on the 26th of October. Then we have a mastermind that is only open to professional members. So if you're a professional member, please register for the mastermind that's happening on the 26th. Then you're going to be seeing myself and Daniel for an in-person event when we're going to be discussing strategies. And that's going to be on the 12th of October at 6:30. And lastly, we're going to be doing a coaching and legal support webinar that's for all of our members. That's also happening on the 12th of October. And we also have a free webinar, right? We love doing free gifts, and that's going to be happening on the 5th of October, and that's at 6:30. And yes, that's pretty much it. As always, well, not always since I just came back. I will see you guys next week. From me to you, it is good afternoon.